Hey there, freedom fighters. My name is Andrew Warner. I am the founder of Mixergy, home of the ambitious upstart. And joining me today is an entrepreneur who says that he turned $820 into a company worth $450 million. In 1982, Dan Pena founded Great Western Resources, Inc., a Houston-based natural resource company. He ran it until he had a falling out with his board of directors about 10 years later. I invited him to tell that story and to talk about what he's been doing since, including renovating and opening up to the public the castle that he's talking to us from today. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon here in Scotland. Welcome to Guthrie Castle, and I look forward to the interview.
Me too. I mean, here's a story that there's so many different stories I want to ask you about, but why don't I start off with, you sold a tax shelter to the mafia? Is that right?
Yes, in the early 80s when I founded Great Western I believe it was February of 1980, or August of 80, excuse me. There was a law that was in existence. It was called the Tax Reform Act, and you could sell and utilize accelerated depreciation, amongst other things, to get a bigger write-off. So if you put $1, you could write off $2, $3, or $4, or even $5. And the oil business was one of the ones that took advantage of that until the Tax Reform Act of '86 changed all that. So back in the early 80s, we sold tax shelters to get cash flow and to get our start. And one of our sales agents, a guy from New York City, a very, very prominent sales, in fact, the best salesman I ever met, sold several $1 million worth of the tax shelter to one of the main mafia families. And then he owned it, but the oil went from $40 a barrel to $10 a barrel. And so all of our shelter and all of our equity was wiped out. It's just like a margin account. So in 1984, we took the company public in the UK on the London Stock Exchange, and I called back, and this was about the summer of '84, fall of '84. And I'm talking to our chief financial officer, who was a former Coopers & Lyman partner. And he said, "We have guests here." And I said, "What do you mean? Why are you whispering?" He says, "Because I'm standing in the hall." And I said, "So why are you standing in the hall?" He said, "Because they're here." And I said, "Well, who's here?" Make a long story short, he said that one of the senior mafia bosses was there with his two bodyguards. And both bodyguards were about 6'5", 6'7", weighed about 300 pounds. They could block out the light. And so I said, I'll be right home. So I flew back to Los Angeles, where we had an office there at the time. And I met the gentleman, and we went out to dinner. And he's explaining to me that he doesn't care about oil going from 40 to 10. He doesn't care about nothing. He says, "I want my fucking money back." And he leans across like that. And he's a very dapper guy and well-dressed. And I said, "I can't give you the money." He says, I read in your annual statement, you've got the cash," which I did. I said, "We're a public company. I can't just write you a check for $5 million. And I said, "Even if I could write you a check, I wouldn't write you a check for $5 million. You took the risk. I lost money myself in the tax shelter." He says, "You don't understand, Mr. Pena." He couldn't say Pena. "I want my fucking money back." And to make a long story short, I didn't give him the money back. And he sued us. And as the DA in New York would say, it's the first and only time they ever know the mafia suing, not just the guy, but a public company of all, for money. And we drug it out in court for a number of years. We actually had a shareholders meeting, which he attended, because he was also a shareholder in the company, so it was public. And we had an open vote shareholders meeting where everybody raised their hand to do such and such. And he stands up and he pounds the desk that he was sitting by, and he said, "All your votes are canceled. My one fucking vote cancels all your votes if you know what's good for you." And needless to say, a lot of the shareholders were frightened. We ultimately helped participate in a case against him where he was convicted. he had to wear an ankle bracelet because then he got sick. He was one of the first guys to get sick because all the mafia guys get sick and then they can't go to jail.
I see.
But the real problem is I personally picked the check up from him personally, myself. I went to his office in New Jersey.
The original check when you guys sold him the tax shelter, you picked it up.
Correct.
Right.
Even though I didn't do the selling, I collected the money because he wanted to make sure that the CEO knew who the money was coming from. So I went to his big construction operation in New Jersey, and he said, your name is Pena. And I go, yes. And he says, what kind of name is that? And I said, well, it's named in Spanish. And I said, but my grandfather's from Palermo. I'm 1/4 Sicilian. And he goes, oh, and he gives me a big hug and says, too bad it's not a half. Because if you're a half Sicilian, that's obviously better than being a 1/4 Sicilian. So we went to court, and then finally we won. He appealed it. We won. He appealed it. And then he went to jail, and he died. Not because he was he didn't go to jail, he got convicted, and he was on house arrest. But then he ultimately got sick, and he passed away.
All right, I want to get into the heart of this story of how you built up this company. But first of all, did I get my facts wrong already? I thought 1982 is when you started the company. You're saying 1980.
Yes. No. If I said 80, I misspoke. 82. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So before then,
I normally say early 80s, but you're precise. It's 82.
Okay. And before then, you went to the Army and you told Jeremy, our producer, that they made a man out of you. And you told him that they made a man out of you by doing what? Can you tell the audience?
Yeah, well, in those days, I volunteered for the draft in June of 1966. I was 20 years old. And at the height of the Vietnam War. And I went in as a kind of a screw-up college kid. That wasn't getting good grades. I was essentially flunking out of school, and I went in as a private and Fort Ord Fort Ord, California, which is up near Monterey. And I was there, I think, 16 weeks through basic and infantry training and advanced infantry training. And I decided that I was going to try to go to OCS, Officers Candidate School. And so I signed up, and as fast as they were killing second lieutenants, you'd have thought I didn't have to wait 6 months. But I had to wait 6 months to get into OCS, and I was accepted. And I started OCS in December 66, and I graduated on July the 1st, 67 as a second lieutenant. And it made a man out of me. I was responsible for other people. I was ostensibly responsible for their lives in peacetime and in wartime. It's the first time I really had any responsibility to do anything. Although I had been working since I was 16, various jobs, but I mean, it was the first time that I actually got a regular paycheck every month. And a paycheck for a second lieutenant in 1967 was $302 a month. A private in the Army in 1967 made, I believe it was $68 a month. So it was like a 400 or 500% pay increase. So I thought it was pretty good.
You thought it was pretty good, but did you at the time even say, I want to be a millionaire one day, I want to earn big money and be worth... No, you didn't. This was just where you were.
No. It came later. So my graduating class of OCS, 107 people, 100 went to Vietnam. I was not one of the ones who went to Vietnam. By some stroke of the Army government, they sent 7 single guys to NATO, Europe, where we basically drank and fornicated our life away for some 2.5 years.
So you had 2.5 years of sex in Europe.
And alcohol. Yeah.
Okay, and alcohol.
But still, I was an officer, but I had responsibilities. But it was a lot better than dodging bullets in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So, but I saw, and I was around senior officers, and I was around ambassadors, etc. And I saw that there was a different way of life that I hadn't experienced. And it was a more cultured way of life, and that culture costs money. I had, as a second lieutenant, I had a car and a driver because I became a company commander of a security company when I was there. We saw that the only thing that differentiates other than morality, is money. And how could I make money? And as the Vietnam War wore down, I decided initially I was going to be a career Army officer, but I decided to get out, and I went back to school. And because I got such bad grades, I had to basically repeat the first 2 years of my college education by taking the courses over again, because D's and F's don't count. And I ultimately finished 4 years of college in 2.5 years, and I graduated on the dean's list. People often ask me, well, why weren't you a magna cum laude, summa cum laude, valedictorian? Because an A and an F still makes a C. An A and a D makes a C plus. So the fact that I graduated on the dean's list meant that I was getting 3.5 or above semester by semester, but it was making up for all the bad grades that I got when I first started college. And so I took as much as 26 units in a semester. The normal load is 12 to 15. And I took at 2 different schools at the same time. And I took 15 to 18 units over summer school. And over summer school, you're only supposed to take 6 or 8. So, and I worked. And I was a graduate assistant, and I worked.
By the way, I can see the sun move, or I notice that it's moving as we talk because it's coming in more from the window. Can you tilt the camera away from the window? The brighter it is behind you, the darker Skype makes it.
Well, there is sun here.
There you go, that way. There, now it brightened up so much.
Okay.
And let's see if we can get you in the shot. Great. By the way, the story I was fishing for was how they attached batteries to your testicles.
Oh,
is that inappropriate to bring up in an actual interview?
No, it's not appropriate for me. That's at OCS.
I see.
When we went to OCS for 6 months, back in those days, in the 60s, they could beat you, kick you, spit on you, call you bad names. They could do everything. Now you can't do that because it's not politically correct. Even SEAL team training now, you go home on the weekends for SEAL team training if you're married. SEAL team training, which I'm still tough. So when we were going to OCS, and this was part of the Ranger training to OCS, when you were doing escape and evasion, if they captured you, they did a number of things. One of which is they pin you over an anthill and pour honey on you, leave you for 2 or 3 days. Or they hung you from a tree by your thumbs, and they put battery wires to your testicles.
This is Americans doing it to Americans.
Correct.
Unreal.
These are guys that just came back from Vietnam that are training you. This is what's going to happen to you if you get caught.
Nice. All right, let me get into the business of it, because I've got an audience here of thousands of entrepreneurs who are dying to learn how to build successful businesses and do it by hearing how you did yours. So here's what I'm wondering. How do you even get into this business? I understand how to start a software company. You just turn on your computer, you learn how to program, or you find someone who does, and you start, creating a minimum viable product, and you build it up from there. But to get into energy, I have no clue. So how do you get into energy? And then we'll talk about how you started this business specifically.
Well, it's the same advice I give to the kids now. When I started the company, I was a CEO of 3 other two energy companies in a conglomerate before I founded my own company.
So you rose up in the ranks working for those other companies and became the head of the companies?
No. I was with Bear Stearns, and I went to work for one of our corporate finance clients. Mm-hmm. He made me CEO of one of the subsidiaries, and within a couple of years, I was CEO of the parent. And then in one case, I diversified us into other products, including we were in the movie business, the real estate, insurance.
Why did he make you CEO of his company? If you're working at Bear Stearns, how does one of Bear Stearns' clients say, you know what, this guy Dan, he's going someplace, I'm going to ask him to be CEO of my subsidiary?
I had advised him for a few years prior to that while he was a client of Bear Stearns, and we had done a lot of smart things. And even though he was a very great salesman, he was a shitty operations guy. His leadership skills weren't great. My leadership skills, subsequent to me getting out of OCS in the military, I spent 3.5 years active duty, and I spent 3.5 years in the reserve. My leadership skills for a 25-year-old guy, 26, 27-year-old guy were extraordinary. I mean, even today, the thing that I see, the flaw in young kids is they have next to no leadership skills. Their management skills are okay. I'm not saying they're good. They're okay. But if you don't have some sort of leadership skills to back up your management skills, employees don't do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. And many of the young managers and the entrepreneurs, unfortunately, that are listening to this, they want you to come to work at 7 o'clock and they roll in at 11:30 from the gym.
I see.
You know, they want you to stay till 9 or 10 o'clock and they go home at 6:30, or they go to the bars at 6:30.
So it's about having strong self-discipline, and if you have strong self-discipline, then everyone around you understands that they need to be just as committed, just as rigorous about their discipline.
Discipline, commitment are only a small portion of the leadership skills that I'm talking about. It's laser beam focus. When you're, Clausewitz, about 250 years ago, the famous Prussian general, said, successful people focus on the few, not the many. Mm-hmm. The few, he meant few battles. You pick your battles and you win them, one at a time. Most young entrepreneurs, yourself probably included, do too many things. You probably got 4, 5, 6 businesses because you're trying to juggle in the air.
I'm really focused on just this. But even within just Mixergy, I do find myself getting distracted. As much as I try to say no to new ideas and new projects, I do find myself saying yes. But you were telling us that you were CEO of one company and then another and then another and another. So it seems like you also were doing a lot of different things at once.
Oh, no. The first company I grew from scratch was $3 million. Second company I grew from scratch was $50 million. The third company I grew from scratch was $450 million.
So how do you go to $3 million? What's the business?
We had an idea, an inception of an idea, and it was real estate related, and this was back in the late 70s, and it was based on sales. The more sales that you made, obviously the more revenue that you made. And I went to and recruited like-minded people like myself that had just gotten out of the military. In this particular case, I hired 13 Top Gun pilots to sell real estate with me. And they didn't know that you couldn't sell real estate in the recession of the late 70s. They didn't know that 20 or 22% interest rates kept you from selling real estate. They only dodging bullets in a jet plane over Saigon.
So they started selling real estate for you, and that's where you made the first million.
That was the first company, $3 million. That's while I was still in graduate school. Second company, I had then went to Bear Stearns. A few years later, the second company, I was asked to leave Bear Stearns, and I went to work for one of our corporate finance clients. He made me the CEO of one of their subsidiaries. He had a whole umbrella of companies, and he saw how successful I was in the umbrella. Then he made me CEO of, in fact, we formed a company, JPK Industries, which stood for Jensen, Pena, Kennedy, and a new company which I became CEO of. And
the first company that got to $3 million in real estate, that's the value of what? That's not how much money you took out of the company, right? It's not sale. Is it annual sales?
No, the value of the company at the time. It was taken over. But I had very small equity in that company.
Small equity.
But I was the small equity. I was the principal behind it. I was the driving force. I was. If you were here, I could take you down the hall. I still have this. There's a couple things. Over my door, there's a hatchet that I was given because I'm the cleanup guy. I'm the cleanup batter. When you got a problem, you come to me and I get it fixed. And there's a hatchet over my desk called the Hatchet Man from 1977, where I used to go in and cost 4 clients to Bear Stearns and clean stuff up. And when they got into deals they wanted out of, they had to fire their son, they had to fire their mother, whatever. I was the guy that cleaned it up. But down the hall further, there is a plaque that as a salesman, for the real estate company, I had a 94.6% close ratio. I sold 94.6% of everybody that I made a presentation to. And I used to cry about the 5.4% of the guys that got away from me. Because I was told by my sales manager at the time, a guy named Kelly Norwood, I still remember his name. He said, Pena, a young guy like you ought to sell every bitch that walks through the door. My expectations were high. I thought I should sell every bitch that walked through the door. And I did almost sell every bitch that walked through the door. And, you know, getting back to how do these young entrepreneurs, most young entrepreneurs, their expectations aren't high enough. They listen to their parents. They listen to their friends. They don't hang around with anybody that's ever made $100 million or $500 million. The next question is, well, how do I hang around with people that made 100? Well, we'll get to that. And so they believe. We have two kids from New York City come to the seminar that get here Sunday. One man, one woman, both in their late 20s, 29 and 30, I think. Both, one was picked, I believe, the 30 kids under 30 years old by Time Magazine to be the hot shit, going to crush the world. One went to NYU Stern School and Columbia Graduate School, and one went to Princeton, yada, and yada. Okay, and they're killers. They're supposedly. They're assassins.
Yep.
They're going to come here, and they don't know shit. I already know that. But they're under 30, and everybody kisses their ass. Everybody tells them how smart they are. Not just because they went to all those fancy schools, which I didn't go to, but because, you know, Obama said, or Time Magazine said.
And so you want to kick their butt and show them how much more they need to know.
They're coming to me. I don't want them to be here. They're paying the money though. I don't want them to be here, but they know for them, they know they're not as good as everybody tells them that they are. And we've had emails and back and forth enough for them to ascertain, and I've given them 3 or 4 ideas. Falling asleep with a half a bottle of gin in me. This is an exaggeration. I've lost more brain cells than they have in the drinks I'm going to have tonight. You too. Not just them.
I see what you're saying. And these guys are basically, they're paying you to show up at your castle and to talk to you and learn from you.
Get a beating.
And to get a beating.
To get a beating.
Where did the idea come from for Great Western Resources, Inc.?
It's another story I told your colleague. On New Year's Eve, 1982, maybe 83. A friend of mine named Jack, a very wealthy guy in Texas, called me up and said, Dan, I need a favor. I need to sell this asset before the end of the tax year. Otherwise, now it's going to be taxable in my worldwide income, yada, yada. And I said, sure, Jack, what is it? He told me what it was. I said, okay, I'll buy it. And we'll have the lawyers work on it tomorrow, but I'll send you a fax right now. This is what I'll pay you, etc. So about 6-8 weeks later, I fly to London with one of my lawyers, and we go to look at the assets we bought. The assets we bought, there was more money in the bank than I paid for the company. Okay.
So how did you end up with a company that? Why did they sell this company if there were more assets in it than what they were selling it for?
Because tax liability was going to be 6, 7, 8, 10 times that.
I see.
Because it was going to be scooped into his worldwide assets, and he didn't need that. Okay. So, and people say, well, how is it that you found a company like that, and over New Year's Eve, somebody calls you and says, I want to give you, essentially, I want to give you a few $1 million. And I said, well, if I hadn't been hanging around, and your career is going to be based on who you hang around with. Who do you play squash with? Who do you play golf with? Who do you play tennis with? Who do you go have a drink with? Who do you go, in some cases now, who did you go to school with, etc. Well, I've always tried to be around people that were much more successful than I. Now, that's pretty tough for me to do now, but it wasn't so tough when I was in my 20s and 30s. So I mean, nobody's, well, I don't mean to be rude, but nobody's going to call you and say, I want you to buy this company for $3 million and it's got $8 million in the bank.
No.
No, it ain't going to happen. And nobody's sitting probably listening.
And you're saying that they did this because they're friends of yours, the guy who sold, the guy who.
No, Jack liked me, but I mean, he may have thought I was the son he didn't have. I don't know, but because, and you know, a lot of success is about positioning, and you know, I'd rather be lucky than smart. And sometimes serendipity gives you an opportunity.
But these are millions of dollars at a time when millions were worth a lot. When it was hard to come by, money like that, wouldn't he say?
But his tax, if I remember correctly, his tax liability was $31 million, so he didn't care.
I see. Okay. All right. So then he comes to you with this business opportunity. You jump in. I'm in London, and we're visiting our assets to go up to the Hilton Hotel on Hyde Park, and I pick up a newspaper, the Evening Standard. They give them away. I pick up a newspaper. I'm sitting at the bar, and I'm opening it up, and I see a company went public, an energy company. So I'm obviously interested in it. And in the UK, you have to print your balance sheet and your income statement before you go public. And if anybody has any complaints about it, then you have to write in and you have to stop the public offering. So I'm looking at the assets, and I turn to my lawyer and I say, Mark, we can do this. You see, if this little picture of a company just went public with so little background information, with so little money on their balance sheet, we could do it too. And that's what inspired you to take your company public, this new one that you bought.
Then we went back to the same investment banker, the same law firm, the same accounting firm that did this package, and it was called Petronol was the name of the company, Petronol. The same package, and I said, what do you need from me in the next 30 days to do the same thing you did for these guys? And he gave me, and basically he said, you need 2 million barrels of reserves, 2 million barrels of reserves. So I went back and I put down a $60,000 option on 2 million barrels of reserves, $60,000 option. And 3.5 months later, we were public. And it was the first time anybody had taken an option public in London.
So basically, you didn't have the 2 million barrels. You had an option to buy the 2 million barrels, and you were going public not with this asset, but with the option, with the opportunity to buy that asset.
And it was a simultaneous transaction. As they gave me the money from the public offering, I gave them the money for the oil barrels in the ground.
Right, because as soon as you got that money, you had the option to go buy the oil. Boom, you bought it, and everything was kosher.
Nobody had ever taken an option public before. And then about 200 companies followed me after that. And then I liked it so much, I did it in Amsterdam as well, on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Then they changed the laws in Europe, and you can't do it any place now. But you have to react. And most of the kids now don't react quick enough. Their reaction time is way, way too slow. They're afraid of making mistakes. You know, you probably, if you played any sports, it's all right to strike out. It's all right to drop the ball. You got to learn by doing things not in a good way. Well, kids don't believe that.
You told Jeremy that you've made tons of mistakes. Everyone focuses on the successes, but give me the most painful mistake that you've ever made.
The most painful. I invested, we had a patent that was for a competition, or a product that competed with Kevlar. Kevlar is the stuff that they make spacesuits out of. The Pope's uniforms made out of it. Kevlar, okay. It's bulletproof. I spent 13 years and $4.5 million of my own money trying to compete with DuPont, who has Kevlar. It's estimated that DuPont spent between $150 and $250 million keeping me out of the market. And I didn't think that was possible, that they would. I got a big Japanese textile company to partner up with that did the research and development. To make a long story short, that was painful. 13 years.
So what do we take away from that? That you don't compete against an enemy who could crush you?
No.
No. What do you take?
You got to know when to fold. You got to know when to fold.
And you should have folded earlier. When you saw that you weren't going to win, you should have just accepted it and moved on.
Fair. I should have walked away after 3 or 4 years.
By the way, I said at the top of the interview that you turned $820 into a company worth $450. We're seeing how you got the company that eventually was worth $450, but I didn't get to where's the $820? What does that mean? I kind of used it because I wanted a hook for this interview, but I don't understand. Where's the 820? Is that how much money you
I,
had
I,
out of the?
I incorporated Great Western with $1,000. I put up 820. A junior partner put up 180. The junior partner, a guy named Bob Anderson, used to be Secretary of the Navy for Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
I see.
Okay, but after we're into this about 6 or 8 months, and I was doing all the work, I met him at his home in Dallas, and he says, Dan, I'm gonna give you my stock back because I'm really, I got to spend time with my wife. She's not well, etc. So I paid him $180 for his. And that's how it started with 820.
And that was the company that you bought the business that Jack introduced you to.
Correct.
I see, through that company. All right. And you're building this up. I've got an article here from, let's see, from 1988 from the Sun Telegraph. Talks about all the different assets that you have, coal mining operation that you bought in 86. And you build. Here's how the article ends. It says that your vision is to take this business to, I think it's, where is that? $1 or $2 billion. $2
billion.
No, actually, here it is. In 5 years' time, I expect Great Western to have assets of $2 billion to $3 billion and revenues of $700 million to $800 million. So
that's about right. That's I think I remember the interview. Yeah,
that was the vision that you had for yourself, and the company at its height when you sold, I think it was, or when you were pushed out, was worth $450 million. Did you feel at the end of that like a failure, or did you feel like you should never have said publicly that that was your big goal because then people will always measure you against it? How'd you feel?
That's the opposite. When I'm asked, I set my goals too low.
You should have. Why should you have said more than 2 or 3 billion if you didn't even hit that?
The company probably would have been worth $1 billion. If I had said it's going to be worth $7 billion, I probably would have got to $1 billion.
Tell me the reasoning behind that. This is something that you said that you noticed even Ted Turner took away as a lesson from his father. Explain that.
Correct.
That attitude.
Ted Turner got 3 things from his dad when his father passed away, and he left him a small advertising billboard company.
Mm-hmm.
He left him a $2 million billboard company. One. Okay, and I heard from Ted's own lips to my ears at the Harvard Club in New York City this story. We were both on the dais that day. Excuse me. The second thing that he left him was early to bed, early to rise, and always advertise. That was a motto his dad gave him. But the third thing, and the thing that changed my life, and this was in 1993 that I heard Ted say this, he said, his father, Ted Sr., telling Ted Jr., son, set goals that you will not accomplish in your lifetime. Set goals that you will not accomplish in your lifetime. Don't set safe, wussy-pussy goals like, I'm going to do this, that. And that changed my life. And then I realized, looking back in retrospect, that I didn't set high enough goals. But nobody feels sorry for him because the company only got to $450 million. I also had 2 other goals when I said that. They didn't put it in the newspaper article, I don't believe. Number 1, I said I wanted to be in the top 5 income earners of oil executives in the world, and I wanted to have the 50th largest, from scratch, the 50th largest energy company in the United States. Not the world, in the United States. That company, when I made that comment, was George Bush Sr.'s oil company. It was the 50th largest energy company.
Was George Bush Sr.'s oil company was the 50th largest oil company at the time?
When I said that, okay. And we got to the 49th largest company in the United States, and I was 5 years, and 3 of the 5 years I was the highest paid energy executive, but I was in the top 5 all 5 years. But I didn't get the $2 billion. I only got the $450 million. And then the shareholders threw me out, and the shareholders threw me out because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in August of 1990. And the Kuwaiti government owned 30% of the company. Everybody thought that the Kuwaits were going to have to sell assets to pay for the war. Our stock price went down. Then when the war, America stepped in to save Kuwait, then they said, well, Kuwait's going to have to sell off assets to pay for the rebuilding of Kuwait. The stock went down. So the stock went down 85% under on my watch. and and the Kuwaitis who own 30%, and the other big shareholders, the Bank of England, the Church of England, Fidelity, Prudential, all the big shareholders, we got to chop somebody's head off. So they told me I had to leave on January the 10th, 1992.
How much were you able to take from not take from the company? What was your net worth after leaving the company?
That's not public record. You know, all my stuff's in trust, irrevocable trust. So it's not a matter of my net worth, and it hasn't been for 25, 30 years. I'm not a trustee. I'm not a director of my trust, so it's not for me to tell you how much trusts have. But I can tell you when we went public and I turned $60,000 into 50 million pounds, which is about 100 million bucks, that was 80% my money at that juncture.
80% of what?
Put it all in 80%, because I owned 80% of the public shares.
When you took it public?
When I took it public, correct.
Okay.
So 80% of that $100 million was my money, just in stock, not counting whatever else I had, which I had a bunch of other stuff. But
was it over $10 million at that point?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, over that.
On one day, I added $50 million to my net worth in 1 hour.
When?
When the day went public.
The day went public, right. You're pushed out. Let me see what happens. They sue you or you sue them? Planning to come back?
I sued them. They weren't going to honor my employment contract.
Okay. They wanted you to pay an obligation to repay $1.3 million in company loans, and you said no way. You weren't supposed to get you told them that they weren't supposed to get $1.3 million unless you were with the company for the life of your contract with them.
Correct.
And you won.
Correct. And I won. I won $4.6 million judgment, if I remember correctly. So
what's the best thing I want to get back to business, but let's take a step away from business and talk about some of the fun parts of life of having built this business. What's the best thing that you did for yourself beyond buying the castle, now that you're able to do just about anything at this point in your life?
The best thing that money and wealth has given me is the ability to influence people I wouldn't have the opportunity to influence, even before I started coaching and mentoring. Because people, and I'm not saying this is right, this is just life, people listen to you when you have money. Donald Trump is a classic example. People listen to Donald. I'm not saying they shouldn't listen to him. I'm not saying they should. He's a very smart guy. And, they focus on his successes, but he's had a lot of failures just like I have. He's taken companies bankrupt and et cetera. But he's a visionary in his field. He's a smart guy. So he influences. People that are running for president go to see him. So when you have money and you have wealth, you have more influence. Now, I've used it the last 20 years to influence younger people, not always young, but younger in experience to me, younger people that want to get more value out of their life. And that transitions into being able to perform at a higher level for your family. Excuse me. And it gives you the ability to send your kids to the schools that they can get into. Like my daughter just, started Northwestern for grad school.
And you're saying that because you've made money, because you have this career behind you, and because you've made money, younger people are more willing to listen to you, to take your advice, to live their lives based on your direction.
Correct. And when they come here, they're in awe, because this 15th century storybook place of ours, or mine, is pretty awe-inspiring.
Why'd you buy a castle?
I was running down Hawthorne Boulevard in Torrance in 1983, and I had just looked at a Robb report that had just come out for one of the first issues, and I was running with my wife, and I said, honey, I think to raise our children, At that time, we had 2 kids. No, we had 1. She was pregnant with our second. That I want to buy a big castle on an island. Now, arguably, we're on an island here, but this isn't the kind of island I had thought of. I thought we were going to be a little island. And I started looking for that Thanksgiving. 5 months later, we went to the UK, and we started looking at in Ireland here. And this was the 13th biggest state that we looked at, this one. And I bought it 8 months later. And I fancied the idea of my kids going to proper, posh English schools, etc. Type of education I certainly didn't get. And I fancied the idea of them growing up with a sophisticated life that I didn't have, and try to give them as much as I possibly could. Now, that's had some drawbacks because being rich kid isn't always good. But they've settled in pretty well, and they're all grown adults, and they're doing pretty well with their lives.
You said sophisticated life that you didn't have. You certainly at times in your life were eccentric, non-politically correct. In fact, you told Jeremy, our producer, about the time that you fired someone over the phone. And what happened when you did that? You actually called this person up who worked for you for how long?
He said that you can't fire me.
Okay.
And I said, I'll meet you tomorrow morning at the LAX. So I got on a plane and I flew to Los Angeles in the Delta, whatever the room is called, the Crown Room, where you go for miles, etc. Frequent flyers, I'm trying to say. And I went there and I ran across the room and I jumped on him and started choking him. And I said, I'll show you I can't fire you. Who can be fired? And security
Physically
came in and they
choked
drug
him.
me away. Sure, yeah, correct.
Until security came and took you away. Yeah, you know what? I can't figure this duality of your personality. On the one hand, you're a cerebral guy who wants to influence younger people, and wants to give your kids the good life and are living in a castle. And on the other hand, you fly to someone to choke him, who just because he told you that you can't fire him over the phone. Help me understand this.
Well, first of all, I'm from East Los Angeles originally, the barrio. And there are not many cerebral persons there other than drug dealers that haven't taken any drugs.
I see.
And unlike most societies and well-educated, perhaps yourself included, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to tell you that. Where I come from, you don't tell them, you show them. Remember I said earlier in leadership, it's not what you tell people to do, it's what they see you do. Now, this guy had done something very bad to the company, cost us a lot of money, and I was well within the rights of firing him. But he obviously thought that I was more politically correct. He thought I was too old. He's past it. He actually thought he was going to stay with the business. So I wanted to send a message out to all the employees.
Don't fuck with me. That was the message that got out.
I say you're fucking fired. You're fucking fired. So, and I'm not the only. That's not the only time I ever choked anybody. But there are people out there that play hardball.
When else did you choke someone? Actually, let me ask you this. Since we're talking about choking and being this open, there are certain things that we're supposed to say as entrepreneurs. It's the right way to build a business. It's the kind of stuff you see in business books, be nice to everyone and so on. And then there's certain things that you really have to do to build a successful business. What are some of those things that you really have to do that you're not supposed to talk about?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with the premise you just gave.
Really?
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't believe that. Steve Jobs, God rest his soul, wasn't nice to anybody. Bill Gates in the first 25 years wasn't nice to anybody. Donald Trump is only, and I have a lot of respect for him, is only nice when it's good for him.
Yeah, and Barbara Corcoran talked about, I don't know if it was in this interview or in the book that I read about, the book that I read in preparation for her interview here, about how he basically, she said, cheated her out of money until she pressed him and he had no choice but to pay what he was owed. That's the kind of thing you're not supposed to talk about publicly. That's not in the art of
Well,
the
I
deal.
talk about it. I
Yeah,
mean, so
tell me what you did like that you're not supposed to talk about. Who you squeezed that you weren't supposed to squeeze. What we're not supposed to teach in business
no,
schools
no,
and in
no,
books.
no, no. Well, no, and it's not that I squeeze when I. It's that most big guys squeeze and don't expect to get squeezed back. See, I've always thought, and still do, it doesn't take anything for me to step on a little guy or kick a little guy. You know, that's not that. But to kick back a big guy, that's worth doing, because then maybe you're going to prevent him from stepping on just one little guy. You know, little guys, somebody's stealing from me in one of my businesses today, right as we speak. I don't really care. Okay. You know, I do business in third world countries that are really poverty stricken, and, you know, a dollar means something. They can live a day on a dollar. That's fine. I'm not going to promote that they should steal, but I don't take it as seriously as if somebody that is a well-known, successful businessman wants to steal $500 from me, because he's so used to stealing $500 from so many people. Arguably, some people say that's how he got to be successful, stealing bits of money from people. I have a lot
Do you
of things.
agree with that?
No, not
No.
at all.
You
I
don't
have a
agree
lot
that
of.
that's the way to do it.
No. The way to do it is, you know, it's you have to find something and do it different. If you can't do it different, you got to do it better. My goal in life is always, most of the new ideas have already been thought of.
But it's also finding the angles. You found an angle when you said, I could go public if I have this many assets, if I have this much oil. I know how I could get that much oil. And you found an angle and you worked it. Did you have other angles like that you found?
Oh, absolutely.
What else?
The first year I was in business, I did $50 million in business with one employee, myself. I had a least fact machine, a phone in the spare bedroom of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some research and found out that the refineries, were only operating at 40% capacity, and that they needed more oil, but nobody wanted to do business with the government, the Defense Fuel Center, the DFFC, because it was so much paperwork. You had 3 feet of paper. This is when everything was paper. You had 3, 4, 5 feet of paperwork, and nobody wanted to do it. So I went out and found a way to bid on oil contracts directly from the government, jet fuel to be exact, and to fill empty refineries. But we tell the refineries that you don't have to do the paperwork. I'll do the paperwork, and I'll be the middleman, and I'll take the 1 or 2 or 3 cents a gallon in between spread. I'll buy it for $1.01, and I'll sell it for $1.03 or thereabouts. The company was called Marion Refining in Alabama. And I like Marion, although there were other refineries that were more empty than his, but he was a retired 1-star general who had gone to OCS in the same place I went to OCS. So when I introduced myself, we were like, lost brothers, or we hadn't seen each other, even though he was considerably senior to me. The military has boded well for me when I meet ex-military guys, so the military is good. I haven't really utilized my Hispanic Chicano barrio, because not that many guys when I was growing up had any money. Now there are. But in 1981, Hispanic business, I was man of the year in Hispanic business in 1981. I was and I brought this to talk in case you asked me, but you haven't, but I'm going to bring it up. I was the subject of a Pulitzer Prize winning article for the Los Angeles Times in 1983.
What was the headline on that?
Pardon?
What was the headline on that?
My picture's on the front page of the LA Times, but the in-depth examination of Southern California's growing Latino community by, that's what it is, in-depth exam. This isn't the article. This is a Pulitzer Prize, okay? But when you had a $50 million company in 1981, 82, 83, you were considered filthy rich. When I went to my 20-year high school reunion in August of 83 and I walked through the door, I had just been on the cover of the LA Times. And they looked at me and they didn't know it was the same Dan Pena. And they said, "We thought you died in Vietnam." I said, "I didn't go to Vietnam, but I probably would have died if I had gone, but I'm here." So to the extent that I use the angles, I've used my success in a pretty professional way. But you got to be successful first. I didn't have a father. My dad was a cop, okay, LAPD cop. You know, he's a great guy, became a college professor at the end of his second career. But so I had to make my success, you know. My children lean more on my success because I didn't have any success to lean on. You know, my dad was an honest guy. That's I'm not saying that's all he had, but that's all he had. He was an honest guy. He was a working guy. I don't know if they still call him working stiffs, but he was a working stiff.
Yeah.
He's a blue collar guy. And my mom was a housewife. So, but everybody's got an angle, but they're either embarrassed about it. Okay. When I wanted to raise money to go drill in Israel, who would be the easiest person to raise money from to go find oil in Israel?
Jews.
Jews. New
And
York
so,
Jews.
and what did you do?
My partner, Governor Hugh Carey, was a former governor of New York. He set me up with big meetings with all the rich Jewish people in New York City. We raised $60 million. And we all have, you know, and so for
And
those
when you met with Israeli officials, you took a Jew with you. You said, "I'm not a guy who can connect with them on that level, but I know
Correct.
that angle will work, so I'll bring a Jew with me to talk to other Jews." And
Correct.
I see, right?
Correct.
And that's what you mean we need to do.
That's when I told the oil minister when he said, "Mr. Pena, Shell Oil was here, this was there. Why do you think a little independent oil company like you can find this oil?" And I said, with the greatest respect, Minister, I said, "You know the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad?" And he laughed and he said, "Yes." And I said, "You've been dealing with a chicken shit and I am the chicken salad." And he told his underlings, he says, this goyim, meaning non-Jew, it's probably got enough chutzpah to find this oil. And so I got the contract. And but we all have, but I mean.
But there was no oil there, was there?
No.
No.
And because I've been partners with the Kuwaitis, the Saudis, the Yemenites, and everybody else in my career, there's a big joke because the earth flapped over and there's nothing. 100 meters away there is, but not there. And so the Arabs have a big laugh about it. Of course, the Jews don't, but the Arabs do.
Were you arrested by the Israelis at one point?
I was
Why?
arrested because I wouldn't wait. They kept me waiting in the Tel Aviv Hilton for 10 days. They wanted to see how it was their form of a doofus test. You know, does he really want to do business with us or not? He's not a Jew, so they didn't really trust me. And the highlight of my 10 days at the Tel Aviv Hilton is I met Mark Spitz, who I didn't even know was Jewish at the time, but we sat and drank a few days. And I told him I'm not going to wait any longer because they said we couldn't meet on Friday night because it was the Sabbath. I said, "Well, I'm leaving." So I went to the airport and they arrested me at the airport. They brought me back and we met on the Sabbath. And a lot of Hasidic Jews tell me I'm lying, which is not a lie. I did meet. We signed the contract on the Sabbath. And
And all because you had the guts to walk away from them.
Correct. And most young kids don't have the guts. You always, no matter if you need it to breathe, like air, you got to be able to walk away. And a young 30, 35, 40-year-old kid doesn't know that. And that's why I believe in building a dream team of senior people around you, that people that, you know, I've been doing this 41 years now, and I've been fucked in every orifice in my body. I mean,
what's the worst?
Oh, there's too many. I have hundreds of worse. Embezzlement from key employees, fraud. Just recently, in the last year, I had to fire 116 people that they committed fraud against me, from the general manager down to the lowest operator that picked up a phone.
And what company is this?
I don't want to tell you that. But
who's stealing from you now? You said earlier someone's stealing from you right now.
Somebody.
Oh, you're saying somebody out there is stealing from you.
Yeah,
And you can't get worked up about it.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to, when I was young, I used to get worked up about it, but now, um, and
You
then
know what?
these
I asked
kids,
you before we started recording. I said, How do I make this a win for you?" And often at that point, people say, "Hey, you know what, Andrew? I'm raising another round. Maybe you can bring that up, or I've got this new website. Maybe you can talk about that." You said, "Andrew, I want to leave people with this message that anybody can be successful, and the implication is that if you were successful, anyone could be successful." So where did you come from? You told us a little bit about East LA, about the barrio. What was life like over there?
to give you an example, when I started coaching 20 years ago,
Mhm.
we were going to do an infomercial, and we were going to go to the Florida State Penitentiary for one of my best friends that I went to school with, serving a term for life for murder.
Mhm.
And we were going
He's
to
a best
have
friend
him
of yours.
in high school.
Wow.
Okay. We were going to have him behind the bars and say, if Dan Pena can make all this money and be successful, anybody can, because he should be dead.
Why?
Because I used to do a lot of crazy shit.
For
And
example?
everybody thought it. A lot of people still, my 50th reunion's coming up, and I just talked to somebody here recently. They thought I died in Vietnam. I don't know why everybody thought I died in Vietnam, but I didn't die in Vietnam, obviously. But at that time, 60 or 70% of all the infantry second lieutenants that went to Vietnam got killed. The life expectancy of a second lieutenant platoon leader was about, in combat for the first time, was between 1.5 and 6 minutes.
You know what? I'm going to come back to the military in a moment. But first, when you were a teenager, what was life like over there? It wasn't gangland, was it?
No. There was. I wasn't in any gangs.
You stayed away from it. What were you like as a teenager?
I was a fuck up. I graduated with a 2.5 average, a C plus average in high school. My dad didn't have any goals for me other than to keep me alive till the age of reason.
I mean, keep you alive from what? What were you doing that could have killed you?
Well, one, the neighborhood we lived in. Two, like my buddy who's serving life for murder.
I see.
Shit happens.
I see. That someone who has the kind of temper that can.
There's a picture I'll send you a copy of. 1993, when I was going to do my first seminar in Los Angeles. I went back to where I used to live, and I took a picture of where I used to live in the barrio as a kid. And there was a drive-by shooting there when I was there, taking the picture. And then I went by the grammar school that I used to go to, Rhoda Street School, which I got expelled from 3 times before I was in the 5th grade. 3 times. One time for breaking a kid's arm on purpose. One time for smashing a kid's glasses in his eyes on purpose. And one time for dropping an aquarium from the 2nd floor onto my teacher's head. He was on the ground floor.
Should have been arrested for each one of those.
Correct. That's before I'm 10 years old.
I could see why they were worried, and I could see why if you could go from there to living in a castle, then maybe the rest of us have an easier path. Here's the thing that I wanted to come back to about the military, and this is an inappropriate question for me to ask you, so it's okay for you to say no. But what was sex like in the military when you were in Europe? Like, who are you talking about? Is this hookers? Is this just average women?
No. I mean, first of all, it was the beginning of the braless area. When women went braless and feminist, all that stuff.
Okay.
And the German and the French and the Dutch and the English. And I was young and single, and I mean, they were crazy.
And they were carefree. And so you just walk over to a woman, and in your American uniform, you can start a conversation with her, even though you didn't understand the language. You could just get by. And interesting. Did that build up your confidence more than being able to withstand basic training?
No, well, I had that confidence because of the military training.
I see, and then you used it in Europe and in business.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I'm in with some of my partners at the Claridge's hotel, very expensive hotel in London. We're sitting, 5 of us, and there's a table of 4 or 5 girls about 25 feet away, and the girls are looking at them, and they're looking at them. And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to go to bed." But as I go to bed, I walk over to the table and I sit down and I buy the girls a drink. I say, "Hey, girls, my young partners got no balls, but they really want to buy you a drink. So I'm going to buy you this drink, and then I'm going to invite them over. Is that okay?" And they says, "Yeah, but what about you, old timer? Aren't you going to stay?" I said, "No, I'm not going to stay, honey. You're about 40 years too young. And maybe your mom. Will you bring your mom?" And I go upstairs. and the guys come over. I still do that. I did on New Year's Eve a year ago.
How long have you been married?
Wow, 14, well, almost 15 years.
15 years. All right. So before you got married, were you out there in your
Not as an old guy. No, when I'm talking about when I was young.
I see. No, but I'm saying like you're a guy 15, 20 years ago. You had a castle at the time, right? You were single. What's life like there?
I was married 30 years to my first wife.
I see. And in between was.
And I was a faithful husband. I didn't screw around. I got it all out of my system before I got married.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just feel like I would walk around that place.
And just to correct, my current wife, I've known her 15 years, but we're only recently married in the last couple of years.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What did I miss here?
But guys don't even know how to buy a girl a drink.
No, they're big wusses. In fact, I thought in Europe, I remember going to Europe, and I thought, all these guys are going to be so cool. I'm going to have to sit quietly and watch them. And I remember going into a club in Paris thinking, all these guys are going to start, talking to women here, and I'm going to pick up on their vibe. No, guys would dance with each other and leave the women by themselves. And if you had the ability to walk over and talk, basically at clubs is the only time that they would talk English to you and not treat you like a jerk for talking English because no one else was speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me.
Well, that hasn't changed in 40 years. That has not changed in 40 years. It was that way. And and you try to tell the young kids, they don't, I think, Jack Welch says the two biggest problems in business are, lack of, candor and communication, lack of. Mm-hmm. And I agree with him. But the reason why we have a lack of communication, a lack of candor is because we have a lack of balls. So if you just said lack of balls, you don't have to say, Jack's a nice guy. I met he's a very bright guy, arguably the best CEO in the last 100 years. Okay. But it's a lack of balls. And Jack's got balls because one of the reasons he was so successful is because, he did what he said he was going to do. And he did it professionally. He's a great role model. And what the kids need today is they need more mentors. They need more role models.
Yes. Successful. How do we get to that? You said earlier on, we'll get to how do you hang around with someone who made $100 million? Because you said that being surrounded by people who did inspiring things inspires you and helps you get to do things that are equally inspiring, if not more. We said we get back to it. We're there. Okay. What do you do?
Okay. When I was young, a graduate student and building this real estate company I talked about, my then girlfriend, who became my wife, we used to go to $1 million houses. And $1 million house in the early 70s was a big house. Mm-hmm. To see what they looked like, to get this. So it became in our comfort zone. We used to go to the international airport at LAX to watch people come off international flights from Frankfurt or Paris because you had to have money in the early 70s. You had to have money to get off, to take those flights. We went to Palm Springs and we stayed in a room that would be our whole monthly rent for one night. My wife would go to shops that we couldn't afford. So it becomes within your comfort zone.
I see.
We have kids that show up to this seminar here that have been successful. That how when you buy a suit, it has if you buy a Ralph Lauren suit, it's got a sticker on the lapel.
Yes.
Or on the sleeve.
They sew it in.
On the other, you're supposed to take that off.
Right.
We got people showing up here with a goddamn thing on.
That is the stupidest thing I've seen. It's because they just don't understand how to wear a suit. They think you always have to have the label on.
They think, or the flaps in the back of the suit are still stitched together. You're supposed to unstitch them.
Right.
And the pockets are still stitched together. They don't have a fucking clue. But they made some money on the internet, and they want to spend $20,000 to come here and give them a beating.
Is that what it costs to get a beating from you? $20,000?
$20,000. That's what a week costs you.
You don't have like a lighter beating, like a slap in the face? No, there's no price for that.
I'm $3,000 an hour if I'm just doing consulting. And that's been the same rate for 20 years. I haven't increased my. No, it's 3,000 euros an hour. Excuse me.
3,000 euros.
I just changed it. I just changed it a few years ago. Euros. And I have Siemens, the 20th largest company in the world. I worked with for 10 years. I helped the guy become CEO, and I mentored him for 10 years. And I've got quite a stable of successful people, but that I can talk about. I can talk about Klaus, but some of the people have been successful I can't talk about, but for non-disclosure reasons. But it's, self-confidence. You build your self-esteem in the first 7 or 8 years of life. Who are you around the first 7 or 8 years of life? Who?
Parents.
More particularly?
Other kids.
Mom.
Oh, mom, yes.
Okay. So moms, I love you, and don't feel bad about this, but you have self-esteem or you don't have self-esteem based on your mom.
Jack Welch in his book said the reason he has self-esteem is because of his mom.
Absolutely.
Right.
The reason I have self-esteem, and my mother's ashes
There it is.
there she is.
There she
right
is.
there. Okay. I have self-esteem because of her.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I wasn't a good student, I wasn't a good athlete, I still felt good about myself. I'd be out in the outfield and I'd drop the ball and everybody be screaming at me. It's not the end of the world, because my mom would say, well, maybe you weren't meant to play baseball. She was right. Maybe you weren't meant to do this. Maybe you weren't meant to do that. She believed in destiny. But the kids today, I mean, most of the kids that come here, even the very, very successful ones, they need an attitude adjustment, and they need to work on their self-esteem. And when you're 35, 40, 45 years old, it's tough to build self-esteem. I say it's almost impossible.
And these guys are wealthy enough to come to see you, pay you $20,000, and they still don't have self-esteem?
No, it's not. It's, in my opinion, low.
I see.
Okay.
And maybe it's higher than their friends, but it's not really high enough.
Yeah, but Bill Gates, young, didn't have high self-esteem. You surround yourself with people with high self-esteem, and then it rubs off. You go to $1 million houses, you go to Palm Springs for one night, and you pay $405, and this was 40 years ago, for one night, and you're sitting at the bar, and you meet a rich person. And my wife then, as my wife now, we're both gorgeous, and she used to wear her little mini skirts in the early 70s, and people would remember me because of my blonde wife with a little mini skirt. And now my current wife, my love of my life now, she looks like a movie star. People think she's a movie star. So people don't know me unless we're in a certain kind of business circle. I go to the Harvard Club, they know me.
I see.
Even though I didn't go to Harvard.
But anywhere else, they're paying attention to you because of the wife that you have with you.
Correct. That's not why I married her, but that's just how it worked out. And the people don't appreciate how important it is to work on your self-confidence. And it's just like in athletics. The kid that just won the U.S. Open, Murray, he's been a great tennis player for 5 years, but now he's got the self-confidence and the self-esteem. He got a new coach that was a winner that beats him. And I'm not saying everybody has to be beaten, but everybody needs to have high goals and set expectations very, very high, because I don't believe in, if I set my expectations too high for you, then you're going to fail and you're going to feel bad. Well, I know that I can't help everybody. I'm not a fifth grade teacher where I'm there to help everybody. I can help the people that have the most focus and reasonable self-esteem, reasonable self-worth. Those people I can help.
So you wanted to get them to set goals that are too high to achieve and have balls or guts, because women, what am I saying? I don't want to be exclusive. I don't want to exclude women. Guts, not balls. Fair to say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the biggest balls I've ever seen are on women.
Right.
I mean, some of the most successful proteges, the mentees I have are women, and because they're single-minded, they can multitask, they can focus. The average housewife can multitask better than the average manager in a company.
Or the average female CEO.
Yeah, correct.
How do we come and can we if I'm in Scotland, can I just pop into your castle and say hello? Can someone in my audience?
Not that often. I'm only here 2, 3 times a year because I live in the Philippines. I live in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
I'm in Shanghai,
Can
Hong
they come and
Kong.
just visit, even if you're not there, to get a sense of the place, to feel inspired?
We're a secure place. We have guards and electric, you know. But the castle is open up, a few times a year. Like yesterday, we had a thing here for Save the Children, and that's why Princess Anne, the royal Princess Anne, was here. And so there was 1,000 people here yesterday, yesterday and the day before. And it's Guthrie Castle. It's Guthrie, Scotland. We have our own little town at the gate. It's 3/4 of a mile from one gate to the other gate. That's how wide the property is, 3/4 of a mile. And we have our own golf course, private. It's a pretty spectacular place. It's easily Googled. And the seminars I give a couple times a year. This year I gave one in May, and I give one now next week in October. And they're a week long. And we've got some pretty incredible people coming this time. We have more and more internet gurus coming now because a lot of guys and gals have made money in the internet. And
by gurus, you mean guys who teach how to build successful companies?
No.
You mean internet entrepreneurs, software entrepreneurs?
Yeah, entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But they think they're gurus.
I see.
They think they're God's gift. Yeah, and we have, I think, we have 5 or 6 of them coming. But we have 4 repeats. We have a woman who's coming back for the 3rd time. We have a guy who's coming back for the 7th time. We have another guy who's coming back for the 2nd time, who's bringing his 2 brothers. We have another guy coming back for the 2nd time, who's bringing his brother, who just was here.
How do people connect with you at the end of this interview? If they want to email you and say, hey, you know what, I need my butt kicked, or maybe they start off by saying thank you. If they want to connect with you to just say thanks for doing this interview, what's a good way for people to do that?
Dan Pena at GuthrieCastle.com.
All right, Dan Pena at GuthrieCastle.com. All right. Thank you for doing this interview. There's so much more that I'd like to ask you. I hope I get to meet you in person. We get to have a conversation.
Where are you based?
I'm in D.C. today. I'll be in San Francisco in a little bit.
Where do you live?
Washington, D.C. for a few more weeks, and then I'll be in San Francisco.
Oh, so West Coast.
Yeah. Do you ever get out there anymore?
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to be there at the end of this. I'll be in Los Angeles. I have a very dear friend who is is ill. That's not going to be around that much longer, unfortunatately.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I'm going to see him, and I have a couple friends there. My children, my son, one of my sons used to live there, but now he lives in Arizona. So,
I'll tell you what I'd love to do. If you're up for it in LA, maybe not this trip, get together a group of entrepreneurs to have dinner with you, to have a quiet conversation with you, to get to know you, for you to get to know them, and to just have them learn from you.
That'd be great.
All right. So
and I mean, just the you know how to contact me. I mean, it's
Dan Pena, GuthrieCastle.com.
That's a lot more doable than trying to get on here. Somebody may shoot him trying to get on.
I like how when I even suggested it, I saw something in your eyes like, oh no, don't you have people come my castle? We got security.
Yeah, we do.
I don't want strangers from the internet to pop in.
Yeah, I mean, because
completely.
I call them. In a loving way, I say, the internet scum now that are making a lot of money are quite incredible.
Yes.
And it's and even though they're not Zuckerberg, I mean, it's a lot easier to do a few $1 million in revenue today via the internet than it is bricks and mortar someplace else. And it just is. It's it's a whole different life. And and I have admiration for that. But one thing I hadn't thought of, and this is a closing thing. And if you had asked me this earlier, I would have said it, but I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, let's close with this.
Okay. You don't know this, but I've lost 70 pounds.
No, I don't. You look good in pictures, or maybe you found a way in those older pictures to.
I just didn't allow people to take pictures when I didn't look good.
I see. So, okay.
But I'm in great shape. But I lost 70 pounds. And I've been asked by some health people, what's your secret? To make a long story short, we came up with a new concept. It's called Dan's Cheating Diet. Dan's Cheating Diet. Because when you're my age and you've got money and you've got discretionary time, you don't want to live a life like on Weight Watchers. And I don't mean that against Weight Watchers, if you hear this, Weight Watchers. And so we developed a program that's going to come out over Christmas called DanceCheatingDiet.com, where I show through lifestyle for senior citizens that have arthritis like I do, that can't run anymore, that et cetera, et cetera. And it's gonna come out, and we've had a lot of positive interest. The test market has been overwhelming because there's a lot of people that are 55 and older in the United States. We've tested it in Florida, Arizona, Palm Springs, and one other place I can't think of now.
See, I don't think that's going to excite the audience that we have here with us right now. I'll tell you why. They don't care.
Because they're all young. I understand.
They maybe should care about their weight. They don't care. They are now so focused on one thing, on building their business, that nothing else seems to matter. You remember that?
Yeah, well, sure I do. But see, the thing is that if they think they're focused, they should look up the definition of laser beam focus.
I see, yes. You're saying be even more focused.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're doing anything other than your business, if you're not sleeping under the desk like Bill Gates used to, and I did.
Like you did. I didn't even get to that story, yes.
Okay, and if you're not doing it, if you need a vacation to recharge your batteries, you're in the wrong business.
You should just be like the Energizer Bunny, never needing to stop, just keep on freaking going. That's your mantra.
Correct.
That and balls.
Correct.
Dan, thank you for doing this interview.
Okay. Thank you. I enjoyed it very much. Good luck to you in your business.
You bet. And thank you all for being a part of it. Bye, guys.
Okay.